What hasn't been said about the movie Coraline? LAIKA Studios' first masterpiece is my, and many others' favorite film of all time. A beautiful and horrifying stop-motion adventure so jam-packed with detail and craftsmanship, it's as if this movie was made for analysis. It's difficult to not come away with this film without having something to say about it, and since its release in 2009, people have picked away at its story, world-building, and artistry. From how the cinematography and use of live-action horror filming techniques adds to the overall feeling of uneasiness throughout the film, to the movie's use of Irish folklore and mythology surrounding the Fae, to the emotional psychology behind the Beldam's tactics against Coraline, it seems as though every avenue of this film has been explored. However, one aspect of Coraline I have not seen much coverage on is in the character design, particularly how each of the Otherworld counterparts' designs are tailor-made to both serve as tools towards alluring Coraline and to showcase the Beldam's views of the people in Coraline's life, reflected in her twisted creations. In this discussion, I will be breaking down each of the other mother's creations, as well as herself, by going over how they compare and contrast with their real-world counterparts, how their fashion and general appearance reflect their roles as bait for Coraline, and how their monstrous forms reveal the Beldam's true perceptions of the people she is imitating. This video might just be me corn-plating and over-explaining blatant symbolism in a children's movie, but I cannot help but to overanalyze every detail of this film that became a quintessential part of forming the person I am today, and hope that I can at least point out something you've never noticed before and provide you with some entertainment. Without further delay, let's take a look into the character designs of Coraline's Otherworld, starting with the one pulling all the strings. The Other Mother's initial appearance is a carefully crafted disguise, meant to give Coraline a sense of familiarity while also adding just enough differences or quote-unquote improvements that it will draw Coraline into her trap. One can learn each of the Other Mother's core character traits and motives before she even utters a word, simply through her design. Of course, the most notable difference, and one shared by all residents of the Otherworld, is her black button eyes. Eyes are said to be the windows into the soul, a glimpse into someone's inner spirit. More scientifically, eyes are very important when it comes to facial expressions, with the involuntary dilation and contraction of pupils and movement of eyelids indicating social interests or one's true emotional state. For example, one can tell whether or not a person is smiling or just pretending to smile just by looking at their eyes. The button eyes of the Otherworld are in this way a key tool in their deception, as without eyes, they can easily fake their emotions in order to trick Coraline. The Other Mother is able to hide behind her eyes and lie directly to Coraline, claiming that she loves her, all without giving away any micro-expressions that could lead to her facade's exposure as nothing more than a ruse. Furthermore, the buttons represent her role as a seamstress, both literally, as in the case of the doll she uses to spy on Coraline's life, and metaphorically in the sense that she has carefully crafted and stitched this world together in every facet in order to create her trap. The iconic button eyes not only tell the audience that the Other Mother is deceptive and hiding her true intentions, but also that she has designed everything within this world as its manipulator. Another trait of the Other Mother that will be a reoccurring theme throughout all the designs in this video is her obsession with perfection. When compared to Coraline's real mother, who for the sake of this video I will refer to as Mrs. Jones, the Other Mother has a more symmetrical form, with the Other Mother straightening Mrs. Jones's crooked nose and taming the frayed ends of her hairstyle into a more uniform shape. As opposed to Mrs. Jones, the Other Mother wears bright red nail polish and makeup, covertly signaling to Coraline that she has enough time to partake in leisurely activities such as painting one's nails, and in turn will have enough time for Coraline, unlike the real Mrs. Jones, whose work makes her too busy to spend time with her daughter at a moment's notice. The Other Mother has also done away with the bags under Mrs. Jones's eyes in her own appearance, once again sending the covert signal to Coraline that she will never be too tired to spend time with and entertain her. One last key difference of note between Mrs. Jones and the Beldam's initial appearance is that of the neck brace, a detail which has been changed into a turtleneck by the Beldam. While it still maintains the mother's same overall silhouette, Its absence is once again a conscious choice made by the other mother in order to entice Coraline. Much like the makeup and the eye bags, the lack of neck brace shows Coraline that the other mother is not hindered from taking care of and playing with her from any complications like her real mother. More importantly, the neck brace symbolizes the resentment Coraline perceives from her own mother. When speaking on the accident, Coraline argues that it wasn't my fault you hit that truck, and while her mother states that she never said it was, Coraline clearly doesn't believe her. Coraline blames herself for her mother's injury, and seems to think that deep down her mom blames her too, filling her with guilt. By removing the neck brace, the other mother removes any visual reminder of the accident and alleviates Coraline's associative guilt surrounding it. Through this first design, we can see the other mother's manipulation on full display, turning herself into a better, more put-together version of Mrs. Jones, while still retaining that sense of familiarity in order to draw Coraline into the world. Upon Coraline's second and third visits to the other world, we see some key changes in the other mother's design. Her outfits have changed drastically, no longer trying to mimic the real Mrs. Jones, and instead aligning more so with the other mother's own tastes. Now that she knows she has Coraline hooked on the other world, the Beldam is easing up, and wearing fashion that suits herself rather than her counterpart. Her color palette has changed from being primarily white to blacks and reds, reflecting her inner darkness. After all, in most cases within media, with a few exceptions such as Hollow Knight, white and brightness represents goodness and innocence, whilst black and darkness represents evil and sinister truths hidden in shadows. We also begin to see the first signs of the Beldam's insect motif cropping up in these designs, with her dress resembling the abdomen of a black widow spider. It's just subtle enough not to arouse any suspicion, while still alluding to her spider-like tendencies, which we will get into in just a bit. When Coraline finally sees behind the veil and confronts the other mother regarding her true intentions, she undergoes a drastic transformation. Whereas before the Beldam had soft, rounded, and inviting features, the Beldam has shifted her form into something sharper, more angular and pointed. She towers over Coraline, her wider figure becoming long and spindly, and what once were neatly manicured nails have changed into claws. This transformation not only reveals the inner monster within the other mother, but represents her change in tactics from sweetly luring Coraline in to using aggression and intimidation to capture her prey. Furthermore, her ribs showing through her skin and indented cheekbones make her look anorexic, a predator starving for her next meal. All of this culminates in the Beldam's true form, a monster of frightening beauty that I just utterly love. This is the real Beldam, no longer needing to pretend to be someone she's not or performing to keep Coraline trapped. The secret is out, and there is no going back to the happy disguise she once inhabited. She sports a broken porcelain mask-like face, representing how the maternal and welcoming other mother facade has completely shattered. Her hands have transformed, her fingers being replaced by sewing needles, once again hearkening to her role as the seamstress of this world, while also giving an inhuman sharpness to her design. Her legs are equally sharp and monstrous and insectoid in form. This design is the most blatant allusion to the Beldam as a spider, a creature who creates her own space built solely to capture weaker victims, and who lures unsuspecting prey into her web in order to devour them. This spider illusion even works in tandem with her role as a seamstress, both using threads in order to construct their snares with long, spindly, needle-like appendages. The Beldam's designs across the film showcase her as the ultimate predator of aggressive mimicry, using a harmless and alluring form made via imitation to avoid being correctly identified as a threat by their prey, before revealing their true nature and devouring their victims. The Beldam's designs also reflect her own behaviors and traits, such as her deceptive nature through her button eyes, and her cleverness through the spider-like seamstress motif found across her various forms. While I have less to say about the other residents of the Otherworld, their designs are equally fascinating and are a great insight into the sinister nature of the Beldam's tactics, as well as some insight into her perceptions of the characters her creations embody. So let's begin by examining the Other Mother's right-hand man, the Other Father. Once again, we can see the Other Mother's obsession with perfection on display within how she designed the Other Father. The Other Father's appearance is much tidier than that of his counterpart, with fuller, more shapely hair and a clean-shaven face as opposed to Mr. Jones's stubble. He sports a nicer pair of glasses, with thick black rims that complement his button eyes. The key difference is in attire. The other father wears pajamas, a comfortable-looking robe, and orange monkey slippers. The main problem that Coraline faces in regards to her real father is that he is always working and has to ignore her in favor of his writing. By wearing recreational fashion, such as pajamas, the other father's clothing subconsciously indicates to Coraline that he has time for leisure, and this time for her that won't be impeded by any work. It also reflects the other father's sole purpose in this world, to make Coraline feel comfortable with a fun, relaxing presence. This purpose is further reflected in the other father's more monstrous design. His true form is that of a fat, bloated pumpkin. To the Beldam, the other father is quite literally a vegetable, made to be a dumb, naive, oblivious, and happy figure for Coraline to enjoy. Whenever there is a scene with both the other mother and other father, it is clear that the other mother is the dominant parent, and does not view the other father as an equal. However, by making him sweet and stupid with the baked-in priority to treat Coraline like his own daughter, he often lacks the awareness the other mother has and slips up, much to her dismay. Furthermore, the other mother made him to be a caretaker of the wonderful Coraline-shaped garden, and to the other mother, the other father is just as much a set piece in order to capture Coraline's affection as the living plants within said garden. It makes sense then why his true form would reveal him to be just like those plants. A pumpkin grown to plant seeds of trust within Coraline, just another piece of bait in the other mother's scheme. The other main recurring Otherworld counterpart is the other Wybie, who honestly is the closest in resemblance to his real-world analog than any other creation of the Beldams. He has the same hair, same face, and wears an almost identical outfit to that of the real Wybie. Also, while it is less pronounced, the other Wybie even has Wybie's hunchback. The only major difference between the two is the unique patterns that adorn Wybie's clothing, the skeletal details absent from other Wybie's design. Wybie's skeletal gloves and trench coat add a touch of personality to his design, hinting at his interest in things such as folklore along with his alternative and unconventional interests, such as his fascination with the little dead things the cat brings him. These aspects of Wybie's character are not found within the other Wybie, and thus are absent from his design. His blank clothing is a reflection of the other Wybie's role, a blank slate made to be a friend for Coraline to bounce off of while she explores the many delights of the other world. I always found this kind of funny, seeing as how when looking at the film on a metatextual level, Wybie as a character within the narrative was created for the same purpose. Wybie is not a character within Neil Gaiman's original book version of Coraline, and is entirely the creation of the film's director, Henry Selick, who has gone on record to say that Wybie was created in order to give Coraline someone to bounce off of and interact with. The film would be pretty boring if Coraline just quietly explored without stating her thoughts aloud, so they gave her someone to interact with. In a way, the other Wybie was made by the Beldam for the same reason the filmmakers made the real Wybie, a boy Coraline's age tacked on in order to fill the role of her friend. Moving on to the other Spink and other Forcible, they first appear as they do in the real world, albeit in more risque and theatrical outfits. These designs are absurdist parodies of their real-life counterparts, juxtaposing their old, fat, and withering bodies with the glamour of their theater days. To Coraline, they look hilarious and off-putting, creating an association in her mind that the real Spink and Forcible are this strange and silly as well. Notably, the other Spink and Forcible are the only characters in the other world with colored button eyes, as opposed to the traditional black, painted to resemble their eyeshadow as well as real human eyes with white sclera, once again to give them a closer similarity to their real-world counterparts. These older figures are promptly done away with, and the two transform into their grander otherworld forms on the trapeze. These youthful forms are based upon the caricatures seen within the posters advertising the young Spink and Forcible's time working as Shakespearean actors, down to the impossibly thin waistlines and bright colorful circus-like leotards. Their bodies' new Barbie doll-like proportions speak to their nimbleness and grace, in contrast to the previously slow, disabled bodies meant to resemble the real actresses. Furthermore, the other Spink and Forcible now have the black buttons more closely associated with the other mother and her world. This transformation is meant to pull the rug out from under Coraline, giving her a delightful surprise, while also making her associate the older, bad, bickering other versions with the real Miss Spink and Forcible, and these sprightly, more impressive versions as the ideal. These newer, younger bodies teach Coraline that the Other Mother's world doesn't just imitate reality, but improves upon it to a magical degree. Once the curtains close and Coraline sees the true nature of the act, she finds the pair have drastically changed. They have become one entity intertwined with one another, representing how, in the Beldam's eyes, they fill the same role and are not indistinguishable from each other. They are a sickly pink and green color, with a texture to their skin and hair resembling pulled taffy. They also rest within a waxy paper container shaped to resemble a traditional candy wrapper. Not only does this allude to the real Spink and Forcible's collection of old taffy, but it also speaks to their role as performers within this world. Much like candy, the other Miss Spink and Forcible's performance is made to be sweet and easily consumed for Coraline's pleasure, but lacking in any real substance or benefit to her. It, after all, is a common tactic of kidnappers to lure children in with sweet treats, and these two designs are the metaphorical representation of the Beldam's tactics as an abductor. Finally, we have reached our final character with the Otherworld version of Mr. Bobinsky. He only appears briefly in the film, but his design is still extremely detailed and full of information. While the real Mr. Bobinsky's blue-hued skin stems from radiation poisoning, as evidenced by the medal on his lapel, awarded for participation in cleaning up the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster, the other Bobinsky skin is much more saturated blue, reading as something more inviting and whimsical rather than being the result of illness. His mustache also has adopted a blue hue, and is fuller than the stringy mess of hairs that make up the real Mr. B's facial hair. Again, the other mother perfecting what she perceives as imperfections in the real Mr. Bobinsky's design. His clothing has changed from that of a stained and yellowed wife-beater to a more regal showman's attire, giving the other Bobinsky the appearance of a real circus ringleader. The uniform also always read to me as being military-like, giving him a more decorated look to go along with his medal, though this could just be me associating his coat with the more ceremonial garb with aiguillettes that military officers sometimes wear. His brief appearance tells us everything we need to know and that the other mother wants us to know about the other Mr. Bobinsky. He's healthier, unlike the real Mr. B, and he's a real ringmaster, unlike the real Mr. B. By far the most interesting design within Coraline to me is the true appearance of the other Bobinsky. Or rather, I should say his lack of appearance. When Coraline confronts him for the final showdown, all that remains of him is his clothing and voice. It begs and pleads with Coraline to stay, a vessel for the other mother's last-ditch attempt at coercing Coraline into staying of her own volition. But just like his words, the other Bobinsky is a hollow, no longer a copy of the real Mr. B, but instead an approximate facsimile of him puppeteered by his own mouse circus, now a collection of disgusting rats who serve the Beldam. Side note, this scene, and in particular the distortion of the other Bobinsky's voice during the reveal, is the only scene that still sends a genuine shiver down my spine when I watch it. The other Bobinsky was never important enough in the Beldam's eyes to stick around even as a monster, simply made to fill the role of the mouse circus ringmaster and then be discarded. Bobinsky was never the important part of the equation. He was not a necessary component in luring Coraline, he was only there for the sake of appearances. No, the real important tool for the Beldam was the circus itself. They were the ones who dazzled Coraline with their performance and enticed her to stay, not the other Bobinsky. To Coraline, the real Bobinsky intrigued her only because of the mice, so of course that was the part that the Beldam focused all her resources towards. Of course the other Bobinsky doesn't receive a second form. Why would he? It was the rats all along who were running the show. They were the only part that mattered in the grand scheme of things. The true wonder presented to Coraline. In this sense, all the other people created by the Beldam are alike. No more than set dressing added to scenes meant to attract and persuade Coraline. People whose only purpose is to placate and entertain her enough to convince her to sew the buttons and give Beldam her very soul. And when the facade breaks, and Coraline rejects what has been presented to her, the otherworld creations become absorbed and turn into the very embodiments of the roles that the Beldam made them to fill. The other father, another vegetable in the garden. The other Wybie, a blank friend for Coraline to project onto. The other Spink and Forcible, another treat to behold. And the other Bobinsky, nothing more than a collection of performers trained to keep Coraline complacent. Within the medium of stop motion, every detail is carefully crafted for its intended audience, and the designs created for it reveal a little something about their creator's inner psyche. The same goes for the inhabitants of the other world, each specifically built and designed to beguile the unsuspecting children who fall into their world, a twisted imitation of the people who make up Coraline's reality, and each creation reveals a bit about the true feelings and nature of the horrific mechanical spider that is the Beldam. Through visual design alone, LAIKA Studios expertly made it so that you could gain so much information about a given character simply based on their appearance. And that's just through character design. I could go down a whole other rabbit hole regarding the visual design of the Otherworld itself and its furniture design as a further extensions of the Beldam's deception and luring Coraline into a false sense of security, and its deterioration over time. But that is a whole other can of worms, and I would be here for hours, so for now I shall save it for another day. But to conclude, I hope this essay can show my appreciation and love for this film, and highlight the absolute care and dedication that was put into making it. Hey, so if you're seeing this, hi! I have never made a project like this before, so I hope you enjoyed listening to my ramblings as much as I loved writing them. Hopefully I could make more stuff like this in the future. If you want to see more videos like this, or have your own thoughts regarding the character designs in Coraline, feel free to comment below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate y'all.